Marvel's Phoenix Man, the ultimate power rises. Please like, share, and subscribe. Episode 41. Therefore, Svege's computing power is terrifying, especially on the internet and the stock market, and it is a godlike existence, which is why Leon feels that he will create Ultron first. By the way, how is the expansion of the dark side? Leon asked suddenly. It's going well, sir. Now the Dark Ministry's staff has expanded to 100, each of them has been implanted with a healing factor, and their respective abilities have been improved to a considerable extent. Svege replied. Very well, increase that number to 300, and then it's time to find something for the SHIELD gang to do. Liang said lightly. Okay, sir. The CIA people will appear here, apparently at the behest of the top level of the American government, and if the top level of the United States is not a ghost, it is a complete insult to his intelligence. And SHIELD, as the driving force, is obviously the initiator, and the American government must also want to see if he has any hidden power, and he is now going to retaliate. It's as simple as that. Disrupting the stock market plan is just a warning, and what he has to do next is the real hard dish. Make a new plan, tentatively named Superman, and then send out 60% of the existing shadow personnel, create a new identity for them, let each of them spread across the country, become a hero in the fight against crime. Remember, it must be high profile, but leave some clues to some people in the shadows, so that they can find out the provenance of these people. He laughed. Okay, sir, I'll assign a plan and choose a chaotic area to make the arrangements. Very well, then do it. Of the 100 people now, 40 of them will be enough, and the other 60 will be sent out now. Leon rode. Okay, sir. This was his plan, and since there were people who wanted to know from him whether he had the ability to transform ordinary mutants, he simply put this ability in front of the stage and let those people take a good look. The reason why the people in the dark side are made heroes to fight crime, which is obviously to give the American government and SHIELD people eye drops. He would like to see how ugly the faces of the American government and SHIELD will be when all the ordinary people like and rely on this group of heroes in the end. Leon wants them to know one thing, that he can make these people heroes and he can make these people criminals, and he can do it if he wants to. In Leon's plan, he will not appear in front of the stage at this stage, but this does not mean that he will always hide himself. At least he must let people with hearts know of his existence, but also let these people know that he cannot provoke him, otherwise the consequences will be very serious. Svege's ability to act is unmatched, and with its supercomputing power, it has made a plan to sabotage the stock market in a very short period of time, and it reports melee to Leon at every moment. The next few days will be the end of the day for those who are involved in the stock market. In the stock market, the companies with market capitalizations in the top 50 to 30 in the country ushered in a nightmarish turmoil, and on the first day, I don't know who found someone selling the shares of these companies in large quantities, and more than one person sold them. Which was simply a planned and premeditated stock market turmoil. These 20 companies, whose stock prices have been frustrated in 3 consecutive days, cover a wide range of industries, most of which are manufacturing, or the kind of manufacturing that is world famous, and others such as entertainment companies, retail industries, cultural industries, etc., involving many jobs. In this way, it is easy to form a chain reaction. Some people sell stocks in large quantities, naturally driving those individuals, one by one, unclear, thinking that the stock market winter has arrived, they will join it, and then it is like a snowball, more and more people join it, the industry affected is getting bigger and bigger. And more jobs are involved. In 3 days, the stock market evaporated more than $400 billion. This momentum cannot be stopped, affecting hundreds of large and small enterprises, some enterprises' capital chain broken, directly into the dilemma, while some companies have begun to plan layoffs. For 3 days, the whole of America was shaking, and the people in the government had already sensed that someone was behind it, and it was easy to find out who it was, and when all the spearheads were pointed at Leon, these people were looking at each other, not knowing what to do. At that moment, some people contacted Liang, warning and begging, but Liang simply ignored it, because he knew that these people did not dare to do anything with him. So his plan to disrupt the stock market went very smoothly, and it took just over 4 days to reach the expected goal, and then, naturally, he entered the market with a huge amount of money and began to bottom out. Episode 42. Even some powerful capital predators do not dare to enter the market at will, because they do not know who the initiator of the stock market turmoil is, and they do not know when they will bottom out, even if people with a keen sense of smell are also scalp numb in the face of Svege's strange and multi-segmented implementation plan. In this way, Liang's money went in and out, losing money in the early stage, but the bottom was copied in the later stage, but it also allowed him to increase at the capital level. During this period, the United States was not without action. On the contrary, the official also invested a lot of money into the bailout, but one side was unprepared, one side responded fully, and the effect in this case was also very little. The whole process was only 6 or 7 days. Leon achieved his goal. The freedom of the United States allowed him to have a big loophole to drill. Any official people or contacts were directly pushed away by him, and those warnings were directly ignored by him. At his position, the law can no longer bind him, and now he has the leisure to play with these people, and when he loses patience, the day when he will meet this country will be a tragic consequence. Therefore, many people know that at this time, he cannot be forced at all, otherwise the stock market will not want to play again. Sir, this plan consumes a total of $132.9 billion, achieving a controlling stake in 7 of the top 50 companies by market capitalization, and of the 13 companies, our shareholding has also increased to a considerable extent, and in addition, there are more than 20 companies with equity in more than 20 companies, which are expected to bring you more than $200 billion in capital income in the next 3 months. On this day, Svija reported on the progress of the plan, and Leon was slightly satisfied with the result. These days, the top brass of the United States, including the president, have contacted him, implicitly warned him, but he has directly ignored it, bluntly saying that he is doing what he wants to do within the legal framework, and if anyone is not convinced, he can come directly to him, whether it is within the law or outside the rules. He has the ability to deal with it. It was not that no one did not want to sanction him, and in the middle stage of the plan, there were intelligence services and special operations teams that tried to capture him, but hundreds of people from several departments disappeared before they could set off. This result shocked everyone and understood that Leon had a terrifying power in his hands. His actions naturally endangered national security, even if everyone knew that he did it, but in the absence of evidence, everyone could not take him. During this period, the implementation of the Superman program went smoothly, and the first 60 people were dispersed and assigned to various cities in the United States, basically one person in the second-tier cities and above. These men wore battlesuits designed by Svija and used various names to fight crime in the city, and the best of them frequently occupied the news headlines within 3 or 2 days. Among them, like Shadow Man, King Kong, King of Force, Regeneration Man, Jisoo, etc., the names are naturally from Vesha, and adhering to the indoctrination of Leon, these people do not treat crime like decent heroes, subduing criminals and handing them over to the police. These people are directly killing criminals. And the methods used are the same. With Svija's presence, all those sent out can investigate the details of each criminal, and after killing him, they will make a list of crimes, all of which have a Chinese word, God. In this way, it is only individuals who can think that these people must belong to an organization, and that there is an organization about God that is also circulating among the intelligence services and among the civilians. And because Leon did not choose to hide, many of the clues pointed directly to him, so that the top brass in the United States knew that Leon's men had such a gang of criminals who fought crime, but there was a violation of the law, and each of them was a powerful mutant, which made people even more suspicious. Yesterday, Leon received a call from the One-Eyed Dragon of S.H.I.E.L.D., in which the One-Eyed Dragon Nick Fury very vaguely warned him to stop. As a reward for telling Agent Phil that there were Hydra forces lurking in S.H.I.E.L.D., he also told Leon a message. The country is interested in creating a special services, a mutant squad, to counterbalance the growing problem of mutant conflict, and for a big reason for that is because of you. They have become intolerable to what you have done, and now the signs are pointing at you, and if you don't give up, what awaits you will be destruction. Thanks for the warning, none of this is a big deal for me, and I'm looking forward to that day. As Leon himself said, he is indeed looking forward to it, and if he really goes to the opposite side of this country, he will be able to let go of his hands and feet. Episode 43. Leon knew that this was what he had done, which made some people in the country feel uneasy, and while they were surprised by their own forces, they resisted themselves. It didn't matter, sooner or later for him, there would be such a day. But he knew that as long as it didn't come to the day when he really tore his face, no one would dare to do anything to himself. Sir, it was found on the internet that the United States had set up a special service for mutants, led by several large intelligence agencies, with technical support provided by S.H.I.E.L.D., and that the exchange of information between them had now begun. I have also found some secret documents. Several major intelligence agencies have listed you as a key surveillance target. Pay attention to everything related to you throughout the process, and even now even Ms. Adeline and Miss Lorna have been included in the list of monitors. Leon frowned, and those who knew him well would understand when they saw this expression that he was already a little displeased, and this was to affect the rhythm of the people around him. Is there any other news besides that? He asked. Svija paused for 2 seconds, 2 seconds enough for it to run through the network, or calculate the astronomical amount of calculations, and then it said, parse a message from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s database. What's the news? Leon asked. Captain Me has been found and has now been thawed. Huh? Leon looked slightly stunned, and then nodded, so it seems that the next plot is also fast. He roughly knows some of the plot direction of the Marvel world, but because of his intervention, the plot has now become paradoxical, and many things are different from the original plot. But the recovery of Captain Mill is also a watershed for the plot of the entire Marvel movie, and from this beginning to the back, the entire movie plot has become exaggerated. Asgard's influx, alien invasions, and Thanos finger-wrenching, all of which are equivalent to world-class turmoil for this Earth. Now is also the time to show some of their fangs, low-key for a long time. There are always people who are good bullies for themselves. He got up, the figure disappeared in an instant, and the next moment appeared above New York City, looking at the streets under his feet that were like spider webs, and the ant-like pedestrians and vehicles above, and he couldn't help but smile. This prosperity, I just don't know if you can guard it. When he turned his head, he saw Liberty Island and the Statue of Liberty at the mouth of the Hudson River, the woman holding a torch and holding a book in bronze, which had always been a symbol of freedom in the entire United States from the beginning to the present. Extinguish it. Under a thought, I saw the bronze-colored sculpture, like fly ash, dissipating in midair little by little, and some tourists below found this movement and exhaled one by one. Oh my God, look. My God, what's wrong with that? Statue of Liberty. In melting. God, call the police, there must be mutants appearing. Run. The crowd shouted in horror, facing such a strange scene. Many people showed their fear of facing the unknown, and they did not want to flee here. Liang saw this only slightly, and with a wave of his hand, he saw a crack in the sea surface, as if the mythical Moses opened the sea, separating a gap from the middle, and the waves on both sides turned outward, and in an instant they exposed the central seabed continental shelf, which was 3 kilometers long. As if it were a scar on the sea surface. Snap. A ringing finger, the waves on both sides suddenly rushed towards the middle, surging and surging in an instant, splashing together in an instant, splashing hundreds of meters high, and then the huge waves were pressed down, forming a series of waves, slapping towards the coast. These waves are only more than 10 meters high, but stacked together, the destructive power they can cause is really not small. In the midst of the rumbling, the waves slapped towards the shore one by one, and the first wave took only 5 or 6 minutes to reach High County. The breakwater was quickly submerged, and then the wave rushed to the shore without reducing the force, and then it poured into the street. In this instant, the crowd is chaotic, screaming and screaming, pedestrians and vehicles coming and going in the streets, sinking and floating in the huge amount of seawater, without any resistance, and the scene of natural disasters in this place is terrifying. Anyway, there will be all kinds of disasters in this world in the future, so ordinary people should start to familiarize themselves with it in advance from now on. Leon didn't control the current, but he didn't make the wave too big, he just needed to give everyone a dismount, but in this case, if anyone was killed or injured, it would only be their bad luck. These waves can only drown a few hundred meters along the coast at most, and the deepest ones cannot be submerged, but even such destructive power is enough to frighten everyone. Episode 44. Liang looked at everything that happened below with a smile on his lips, just like a god who had lived outside the heavenly dome for a long time, ordinary cries and wailing, so that he did not have half a bit of emotional fluctuations, just quietly watched all this happen. A moment later, his eyes suddenly moved, glancing to the side, and in the distant air, a fiery red shadow was flying at a rapid speed, dragging a long tail flame, and then hovering in front of Liang. Liang raised an eyebrow, and a smile clearly appeared on his face after seeing the comber. Damn, you made it? The person who came was Tony Stark. His current armor had been upgraded again, and he preferred to strengthen himself with technological means than the implanted superpowers, as evidenced by this fiery red suit. Mark III? Leon asked with a smile. Bastard, did you do the next thing? Tony said with some irritation. Leon shrugged, and then said, as you can see, I did get it, but at this time, shouldn't you talk to me politely? Fuck. Tony wanted to scold people, but he knew Leon's temperament, but he didn't dare to provoke him excessively. After all, the two of them were a group, although some of them were annoyed and Leon looked down on him, but he also knew how powerful Leon was. When the words fell, he flew straight down, apparently intending to solve the mess below. Sigh, in the end, it is the protagonist, in this case, still thinking of saving people. Lee Angle saw this scene, which made him feel like watching a VR blockbuster. Tony had fallen below, pulled a man from the water on the chaotic street, and stayed on the side of the tall building, his figure moving back and forth through the street, and in just a few minutes, he had saved dozens of people. Fortunately, the waves set off by Liang are not very high, and at most it is a torrential current on the street. The impact is huge, but people who will be watery still have the possibility of survival. The trouble is that the sea water is too turbid, and it is impossible to see what is underneath. Then, Leon turned his gaze sharply to another place, and in the high-rise Manhattan undress, another fiery red figure appeared. This figure was obviously much thinner, and from time to time fired white silk threads from one of the devices on his wrist, and then swung into the chaotic block in 3 or 2. Well, Spider-Man is here too? While he was thinking about it, he suddenly sensed something, turned around, and then saw a thick thunder strike down. Click. Like thunder in the dry land, his eyes were full of white and vast electric light. This lightning bolt, which was a little more powerful than the electric light created by the electromagnetic king that time, directly split into his body. He raised an eyebrow, waved his hand slightly, and saw a strange light, and when he got the thunderbolt, it was as if he had been interfered with by an invisible force, and he rushed past him, and the air produced scorch marks and stench. When I looked up again, the sky was full of clouds at some point. A black sister was wearing a silver tights, her skin was suspended high, behind her were layers of black clouds. The black clouds were rapidly rotating, and countless electric lights were stirring, like swimming fish moving back and forth among the clouds. There were also a lot of electric light gathered on her, making her look like a goddess in the electric light, and the pair of eyes that had turned silver because of thunder and lightning revealed a ruthlessness that ignored all things. The next moment, Black Sister waved her finger violently, and in the thick cloud behind her, thousands of electric snakes gathered together and attacked him in an instant. Storm Woman? This thunder actually made his dangerous perception ability in his body respond a little, and it was obvious that if he resisted this blow hard, he would be somewhat damaged by himself. But he just smiled, and then took a deep breath, and the torrent rolled up around him, and the thunder seemed to be bound by something at this moment, eerily stationary for a moment, and then the thunder turned into a little shimmer particle, as if it were a whirlpool of torrents, directly swallowed by him. What? The Storm Woman's face changed drastically. This was still the time she had seen that someone could actually swallow the powerful thunder and lightning she had stimulated. Was this person in front of her a monster? Liang opened his mouth slightly at this time, and his mouth was a jumping arc, making his whole person bathed in electric light, and his eyes became silver because of the thunder. Gollum. He swallowed the lightning in his mouth, and saw the electric light flickering around his mouth, and then annihilated. The electric light of Liang's body also dissipated, and then he returned to his original form, looked up at the storm girl in the heights, and smiled slightly. Is there anything else? He had just directly dispersed the thunder into an energy body, and then swallowed it directly, and the power of the phoenix itself had the ability to devour all things, turning it into energy and becoming his tonic. Episode 45. The Storm Woman's face changed, her body couldn't help but float backwards, and the person in front of her gave her a lot of pressure, and there was a kind of weirdness in that pressure, which made her tremble a little. She had never seen anyone deal with her lightning as easily as Leon, and even Magneto tended to distort the electric field with magnetic force, rather than swallowing it as he did. The taste of crispy hemp is very good. Liang smiled slightly at the Storm Woman, and the next moment, the figure disappeared from the Storm Woman's eyes, who was suddenly startled and did not want to retreat to the side. At the same time, there were countless electric rays on her body to protect her. But at this moment, she realized that she had directly hit a person's body, and when she turned her head to look, she saw Leon's smiling face. Impossible! She exclaimed again, knowing that she now had an electric field wrapped around her body, and the heat of the electric light was enough to melt the steel, and ordinary people could not bear it at all. But Leon stood so calmly in the air, and the electric field had no effect on him at all. The Storm Woman scolded darkly, and then swung her fist at Liang's face, and the fist was wrapped in a thunder electric field, crackling like countless birds beeping. Snap. Boom. There was a crisp sound first, which was caused by Leon reaching out and squeezing her hand in the palm of his hand. The next vibration was the vibration caused by the explosion of thunder and the collapse of the electric field. The two of them were fixed in midair, and Liang's other hand at this time was 2 fingers on her abdomen, and the latter only felt that his whole body seemed to be in control, and he wanted to get out, but he couldn't move at all, and the surrounding area seemed to be frozen. Even so, her body was still surrounded by thunderous gusts, and the waves of energy surged outwards like they didn't want money. The Storm Woman's energy is counted throughout the Marvel world, and even if she has not yet grown to her peak, such an energy intensity is still enough to make people look sideways. The current on Liang's body was stirring, and the corners of his clothes had been burned into fly ash, which made him a little surprised, but then he laughed. Something sent to the door. There is no reason not to want. Thank you for your X-gene, I accepted it. As he spoke, the 2 fingers pumped outward, and at the same time, a large string of blood flowers poured out of her abdomen, and if you looked closely, you would find that the Storm Woman's abdomen was not even half injured, but the blood on her body had been extracted from it. Ah. The Storm Woman exhaled in surprise. She didn't feel pain, but the afterglow of her eyes saw the string of blood beads, surging in Liang's hands, forming a fist-sized blood ball. Liang smiled slightly, and in the latter's surprised gaze, the blood cells in his hands had already disappeared, but it was Liang who used his psychic teleportation ability to directly transmit this blood ball to the laboratory. Oralao, did Professor X let you come? That's when he asked. Damn, how do you know about me? Orolo turned ugly. Liang smiled and shook his head. You have miscalculated your degree of fame. I think in the eyes of people with hearts, it is not difficult to find out your existence. When the words fell, he stretched out his hand violently, and directly grabbed Oraleo's neck, who suddenly had difficulty breathing and wanted to struggle, but his body was bound by a strange force, and he couldn't move at all. Say hello to Professor X for me. When the words fell, she was thrown out by Liang fiercely, falling down like a cannonball. Liang did not look at her again, looked up and waved. The thick clouds dissipated under the disturbance of invisible forces, and the sunlight once again shone on the earth, and there was a kind of rain and sunny charm in it. But at this moment, Liang's body slammed down. He looked up, and he saw a middle-aged man in a suit standing in front of him. This man had a very gentle appearance and smile, and the top of his head was bare and even reflected the sun, and then he heard the man speak. Child, your mind has been lost for too long. Don't let Liang control your heart, you should use your heart to control this power. I feel a familiar force in you, which is evil and dangerous. Professor X? This was the first time that Leon and Professor X had met, but unexpectedly, the latter used telepathic ability to create a projection in his mind. Yes, I'm Professor X, kid, come to me, and I'll teach you how to use your mind to control this ability, otherwise you'll be a slave to power, and that's a very sad thing. Liang heard the words but laughed. You are wrong, in my opinion, any force is a means of use, there is no good or evil. And, I don't think there's anything wrong with this kind of power, I like it. Episode 46. Child, don't be fooled by this power, it is not as beautiful as you think. If you are not wary of it, it will eventually only devour your soul, then you will become a slave under the power, driven by it to do a lot of evil things, and that kind of you, will eventually be hated by the world. Professor X's figure was projected into Liang's mind with pure telepathic power, not that he himself was standing in front of him. After all, with the information that Liang knew, Professor X was a cripple, and his lower limbs could not stand up, and now he appeared in front of Liang like a normal person. Leon was a little surprised. He had never set up any psychic protection or anything like that for himself, so it was not difficult for mutants who could play with their minds to naturally enter his mind. But it was easy to get into his mind, but it was difficult to get out. Leon just looked at the figure of Professor X, and the eyes of the two seemed to cross the limitations of time and space, and at this time, they could feel each other's spiritual strength at once. Professor X is as high as a mighty mountain, and Liang is as ancient as Wanyang's broad sea. The two are as indifferent, and the same will not affect themselves because of external objects. Liang just shook his head when he heard his words, looked at him indifferently, and said, everyone understands the great truth, you don't need to use your set to restrain me, the strength is on me, how you want to use it is my business. If you come today just to preach, then obviously you can't do it. But if you come today to be my enemy, then you will only be greeted by failure. Child. Professor X had something to say, but was interrupted by Leon's indifference. Shut up. As he said this, the space between the two of them began to stir, and the originally calm space rippled like it was about to shatter at any moment, and Professor X's figure also appeared from time to time under this ripple, and his body twisted with the fluctuations. Liang looked indifferent, and there was a flash of cold light in his eyes, and then he saw the figure of Professor X in front of him, which directly exploded and dispersed, turning into a clump of fluorescence and then disappearing. Liang stimulated telepathy, followed the fluorescence that spread out, searched for Professor X's psychic fluctuations in it, and then directly found his own location along with this fluctuation. Next to an artificial forest outside New York, there is a huge courtyard in the style of an ancient castle, and in a huge room on the second floor of the castle, Professor X is sitting in a wheelchair, because telepathy has been erased from his mind by Leon, and at this time, his closed eyes are open, and a trace of helplessness flashes in his eyes. As he was sighing, his body slammed down, and his eyes instantly became distracted. In his mind's mind, there was a scene at some point, a vast heaven and earth, above which was a high blue sky dome, white clouds, and he himself stood on the surface of the water like a mirror, and at his feet was an ocean of unknown depth and geometry, and the deep blue was unpredictable. This is his sea of consciousness, the source of his thinking, the deepest part of everyone's consciousness, but because of Professor X's telepathy and controllability, it can be detected by itself in the form of an entity, and if it is an ordinary person, it is not known that the human body has such a place. Because here represents the subconscious, and Professor X is the kind of person who can perfectly control his own subconscious. In front of him appeared a figure. This figure was dressed in ordinary casual clothes, the body was straight, just standing opposite him, with an indifferent expression on his face. Hello, Professor X, we're meeting again. Just now you visited my world of consciousness, and now I also come to your world of consciousness to see. You have no say in what you say about the power in me, because in my opinion, what can benefit mutants and society for you is a good force, and what is not beneficial to mutants and society is an evil force. You don't have to refute it, anyway, you give me the feeling that this is so. I just don't know whether the power of Magneto is beneficial or useless in your eyes, and again, he has done so many evil things. If you really want to stop it, it should not be difficult with your ability, as long as you control his minions with telepathic ability. Then he is like a toothless tiger, absolutely can be beaten by you X-Men, but you did not do this. I have always wondered, why? Liang's series of persecution questions made Professor X sigh. He just shook his head slightly. Eric just didn't think it through for a while. This does not mean that he is an absolute bad and evil person. If someone can lead him astray, then with his ability, he can benefit more people. Child, I see hope in you that you are better suited to lead the mutants than me and Eric, so stay away from the darkness. The light is more suitable for you. Episode 47. How could he have said this? Leon just laughed out loud, as if he was laughing at his whimsy. Just listen to Leon humming and laughing. You people are also very interesting. You obviously have the ability to clean up the mess now, but you must abide by some bullshit rules. You don't know that people who don't follow the rules can gather more help around, and those who follow the rules are always passively beaten. Why should you? Now come and stop me again. Do you really think of yourself as a savior? Think that without you, the world cannot survive? Besides, this time, this is a conflict between me and the United States, and it has nothing to do with you, so why do you want to step in sideways? And the first thing is pointed at me? Is it in your opinion that the American government represents the official? And as long as I do something outside of the rules they make, that's evil? Leon shook his head with a sarcastic look on his face, and then said, this is the peace you want to guard? Something fake that has been made up by countless people? His inquiry is more like sarcasm, and the object of the satire Professor X is silent. To tell the truth, even if it is Magneto, it also makes Leon feel franker than Professor X. At least Magneto wants to do whatever he wants, with a clear goal. And Professor X and these people are just thinking of stopping things that are evil in their eyes, and some of Magneto's actions do have no small scourge on the whole world, but shouldn't that be the American official to stop it? When did the X-Men become the state apparatus? Professor X was silent for a moment, and then he sighed. Child, evil has corrupted your mind, it has affected your mind, and you have lost the ability to judge. What we want to guard is justice, ordinary people, and this society, and even the whole world. What is allowed under the rules is correct, what the rules do not allow, that is wrong, and the rules are universal values. You are against this value, there is no need for me to refute it, everyone will think that you are evil. I think you should be clear. Stop indulging in this false power, it will only make you go further and further down the wrong path. Give up it, leave the darkness, and embrace the light, or you will become a sinner who is the enemy of the whole world. Professor X's words made Leon laugh out loud. He just shook his head. He felt that he was a little funny, and he would actually think of talking to Professor X, which was a bit confusing. Forget it, we can't pee in a pot, and as punishment for your sudden attack on me, I'll take a shot at you once. I know that you are a master of playing with the mind, able to completely deny and erase a person's sense of self-existence, and coincidentally, I will do the same. So let me see if you can escape from the mental cage I have constructed. Snap. Leon snapped his fingers, and then the space where the two of them were located quickly gushed out countless gray fogs from all around, and these fogs seemed to have a spirit, quickly filling the entire space, along with the deep blue ocean where the two stood at their feet, which also turned gray at the same time. There was only one color left in the heavens and the earth at this moment, that is, a deep gray defeat, and under this color, Liang's figure came out of it. Your self-consciousness is locked up here by me. This is the deepest part of your consciousness, the source of your whole self-knowledge, and if you go out from here, you will still be you. If you can't go out, all that awaits you is an endless winter. When the voice was about to fall silent, Leon suddenly said, by the way, I have constructed 3 layers of cages in your consciousness, leaving an exit in each cage, finding them, and then destroying them, so that I can see how powerful your psychic power really is. There is also the fact that the speed of time flow here has been adjusted to 100-fold degree by me and your own thinking speed, so enjoy it. At the end of the words, Liang's figure disappeared from this piece of heaven and earth, leaving only Professor X standing here alone. He looked around, sighed silently, and then began to touch this cage of thinking with his own spiritual strength. But the next moment he found that something was wrong. This cage was like substance, based on his own self-consciousness. If he wanted to destroy these 3 layers of cages with absolute consciousness, then the final result could only destroy this sea of consciousness. And the result was that the personality belonging to Professor X collapsed and disappeared. Although he would not die then, he would not be him then, but just another person who possessed his memory and body, another consciousness formed by the body itself. It can be said that Liang's hand is extremely vicious, and dealing with the existence of Professor Shang X, who is good at manipulating the mind, is definitely the most deadly killing move. Episode 48. Ignoring Professor X's side, Liang opened his eyes, still in the same place. The communication between the two just now was completed in just a few moments, because it was in the depths of each other's hearts, and the speed of their thinking was extremely fast, so from the beginning to the end, it did not take a minute in total. At this time, the waves below have not yet subsided. Fortunately, the waves stirred up before Leon are not too huge, so the scope of influence is always on the coast, and even so, it is a huge blow to the New York coast. New York's coastline is continuous, and even if all the coasts are hit, the damage is even greater, and some of them are swallowed up by the sea, which can only be regarded as their bad luck. This day will be remembered. Below, the storm girl who had been beaten down by Leon had stopped between the tall buildings at this time, and did not rush up again, because she had already felt that kind of strength from Leon, and she knew very well that she was not her opponent, and even if she went up, there would be no good results. What made her even more unacceptable was that the blood that Leon had drawn from her, she had no idea what Leon was going to do, but her premonition as a mutant told her that it would never be a good thing. Sirens rang out everywhere in the block below, most of them from police cars, some from firefighting and disaster relief vehicles, and there were many people in the city moving fast, rescuing ordinary people from the waves, of which Tony, Spider-Man and the X-Men team were the most active. Finally got this step forward. Leon did not have half a bit of pressure, but was in a relaxed mood. He has been planning quietly since he was reborn, and although he is well known in society, he has more things to hide, and it is good that some people know how powerful the power he wields is, let alone how powerful he is. Leon had always known that he could not live an ordinary life, and that he would inevitably become enemies of some forces or people in this world or the whole world in the future, and he had always been prepared. Today's action is a warning he gives to everyone in the world, and it can also be regarded as a kind of point to his own strength, so that the upper echelons of the United States know that he is not a good stubble, let alone a weak person, and the rules they specify cannot be used on themselves. Thinking so, Leon smiled slightly, and the next moment, his figure disappeared from the distance, and then, his figure appeared in a bustling street, and in his line of sight, a fiery red figure dragged a long tail flame from the side of the street quickly, and he still held both people in his arms. This is Iron Man Tony. He sent the two wounded to an ambulance, and then turned back again, to the other people. Contact Tony. Okay, sir. A moment later, Tony's angry voice came from Leon's ears. Damn, do you know what you've done? In just a short period of time, there were already more than 20 dead and injured, and according to the scope of influence, this number would definitely expand by more than 10 times. You're an asshole, you've become a criminal. Leon wasn't angry, he knew that Tony was this kind of temper, he was proud, affectionate, and at the same time compassionate, and this was the Tony he knew. So he just laughed and said, so, Mr. Iron Man, are you going to come and arrest me? Fuck. Tony hung up the communication directly, not wanting to talk to him at all. Leon just smiled, and then looked at another place, a thin fiery red figure, swinging around in the tall building, from time to time from the wrist of the device to shoot white silk thread, pulling a person out of the water, and then fixed to the side. Leon's figure appeared beside him, moving with him, who was obviously startled. Hi hey, who are you guy? Wow. You look familiar, I've definitely seen you, let me think, wow. I remember, you're Leon, right? That billionaire? Hello little spider, it's a pleasure to meet you. Leon smiled and held out his hand to him. The latter was now swaying in midair, and he shook hands with Leon quite excitedly, and then said, are you here to save people? In that case, man, you've got to hurry, there's so many people here waiting for us to help. Leon kept pace with his speed and said, I am not here to save people, if I told you that I caused this disaster, how would you feel? What? The little spider was stunned and subconsciously said, you don't lie to me? Oh, I mean, why are you doing this? Have you committed a crime? Maybe, who knows, won't you come to stop me? Maybe I'll do more things like that in the future. Wait, you've sinned? Have you really sinned a crime? Only then did the little spider remember the true meaning of Leon's words. Episode 49. I said, maybe, now I don't know if my behavior will be defined as guilty, are you sure you won't come and catch me? If I don't catch it, then I'll go. Leon laughed again. As we all know, the little spider has always been a talker, and together with dead bodies and Ant-Man in the Marvel world, it is collectively known as the Marvel 3 words, and its mouth cannon kung fu is not bad. And the little spider was a little silly, just as Leon saw. Why are you doing this? The little spider asked, suddenly. Leon was slightly stunned, and then he smiled, there is no reason, if you really want to find a reason, that is, there are some people in this country who have made me unhappy, so I have to give them some medicine. What? The little spider's head was hidden under the hood, and he couldn't see the expression at all, but he could hear his surprise in his tone. Seeing this, Liang asked again, "Are you really not going to catch me? You know, I'm the initiator of this disaster." The little spider was slightly silent, and then he turned his head and said in a dull voice, "That's what the police should do." This answer made Liang shudder, and his body couldn't help but stop. He shrugged his shoulders with a light smile, and when he returned to God, the little spider had reached the distance, and he did not chase after it again, but disappeared with a flash. In the distance, Peter Parker turned his head sharply at this time and saw Leon's figure disappear, so he exhaled a breath, quickly ripped off his hood, and took several big breaths, which calmed the agitated heart. Under the hood was a face that was younger than Leon. At this time his face was full of fine sweat, his chest was heaving, and he looked frightened. Damn, that guy. It felt so horrible to me that at that moment, I even had the illusion of throwing myself into the mouth of the beast, as if I said the wrong word, I would be killed by him. He became a hero in order to punish evil and promote good, and after he had superpowers, he did so, and his superpowers were superpower, super agility, and spider induction, especially the latter, so that he could find danger every time when ordinary people were unaware, similar to the ability of the sixth sense, but much stronger. Just now, it was the spider induction that told him that Leon was an extremely dangerous person, and if he was not careful, his life would be in danger. Looking at the place where Leon had disappeared, he still had palpitations on his face at this time, and he couldn't believe that there were such dangerous people in the world. He took several more deep breaths, which suppressed the throbbing in his heart, and then he did not pay any more attention to it, and hurriedly put his energy into the next rescue. At this time, Leon was standing at the top of a building. From here he could see the submerged streets below. Those waves had been disconnected from the sea behind him. The impact force at this time had been much smaller. It was estimated that if he went forward 100 meters, the kinetic energy carried would disappear. The vehicles in the street were surging with the raging sea, and many people were struggling in it, and his eyes saw some of the mutants active in them. These people were dressed in silver and white uniforms. Their abilities were not the same, but they were all doing the same thing, that is, rescue. And Peter Parker's feeling just now was that he had been wronged a little, and he had only left the spiritual world of Professor X, and he still had a little bit of hostility, and that negative emotion was extremely weak, that is, telepathy, or someone like Peter Parker who had an excellent sixth sense. And just such a hint of hostility leaked, so that Peter Parker had an absolute sense of crisis, and it had to be said that his senses were sharp. Leon did not have the idea of killing him, but just on a whim, out of bad taste, he wanted to tease him, and it was only caused by interest, because the little spider was one of the few original characters who could make him not feel bad. While thinking about it, Leon suddenly turned his head as if he were aware, and saw that on the street far below, there was a slim figure floating in midair, and next to him was the storm girl who had just been thrown down by Leon. The slender figure has a fiery red hair, a standard white female appearance, fiery red lips, a big wave, a graceful and feminine body, and looks extraordinary, which is an absolute specialty. Don't say, it's really tempting, like a ripe fruit, absolutely delicious. It seems to sense Liang's line of sight. She also looked up in the direction where Liang was located. The two people's eyes met in midair. At this moment, time and space seemed to be stationary, and there was only each other left in the eyes of the two, and there was no foreign object. The phoenix power in Liang's body suddenly trembled, much more active than before, and there were some signs of boiling. And that woman, at this time, was also a face of surprise. Her eyes widened, and she was a little surprised. Episode 50. A faint red glow appeared on Liang's body. His clothes were windless, his own breath was slowly rising, and the whole person seemed to be activated, gradually coming out of the deep darkness. And the woman was the same, looking at him in disbelief, feeling the same power in his body. His heart was agitated. At this time there was no one else in his eyes, and only Liang, who was standing on the high floor between heaven and earth, was left. Phoenix girl, Jean Grey. Liang silently recited the name in his mouth, as if with a magic power attracting him. Although the two were far apart, they both clearly saw each other, and at this time, they did not see each other correctly, but both felt the familiar power from each other. The power of the Phoenix. Who are you? The figure of a woman appeared in Leon's mind, and then the body of the Phoenix woman soared into the sky and sped towards him, while not far away, a man with strange glasses shouted. Jean, where are you going? Jean didn't pay any attention at all, because only Liang was left in her eyes at the moment, and she wanted to ask why there was a feeling in her that was extremely familiar to her. Liang looked at the piano that appeared in front of him, and a smile appeared on his plain face, and that smile was very strange, like with familiarity, and like with novelty, and there was a little exploration in it. Who are you? This time, the body stood opposite Liang and opened his mouth, his voice full of doubts. I'm Leon, a person who has some connection with you. Leon smiled. Origins? Jean wondered, she didn't understand what it meant. Can you feel the power in yourself? Leon said suddenly. What? Piano doubts. It's like this. Leon suddenly opened his hands, and a reddish light burst out from his body, surging like a stream of flames, while the pale red light behind him spread to both sides, like a pair of huge wings. Jean's body trembled, she only felt that her own strength was invisibly pulled, and her body also emitted a pale red light. Her body trembled, the phoenix power was almost out of her control and began to stir, and a pair of huge wings appeared behind her, opposite Leon, just like a phoenix, and a phoenix wanted to hear songs and dance. Phoenix power, how can you have phoenix power? The sound of the piano was trembling. You know, we are the same kind, we all have this power from a very young age, but we are different, because you were always resisting this force, and It is in control of this power, such as this. Leon said and held out his hand, a flame in his palm was burning, it was a condensation of extremely pure phoenix power. Feeling such a pure phoenix power, Jean's face showed a touch of fear, she was afraid of this power, even if she herself had the same power. Liang's hand was gradually tightening, and the pure phoenix power was compressed with Liang's hand and began to tremble, and the air in his hand was vibrating. Jean's face changed again, this time full of shock. Only those who possessed the power of the phoenix could understand what Liang's move really represented. The sound of the flame was not a hum, but rather, the power of the phoenix wailing, surrendering. The power of the phoenix was surrendering to Liang, so how could Jean, who had always lived in the shadow of the power of the phoenix, not be shocked? No one can control this force, this is the power of darkness, how can you do this? Jean was muttering to herself, and her eyes never left Liang's hand, and the latter just let go of his hand to disperse the flame in his hand, and then held out his hand to Jean, at the same time, if you want to know why, come here. Jean's body trembled, the expression on her face changed, from the initial surprise to the current struggle, no one knew what was going on in her heart, only Leon could feel the wandering in her heart. Just like a lonely person who suddenly met her own relatives, the phoenix power in Liang's body was a family-like existence for her, but this relative was something she was extremely afraid of. Jean trembled and walked towards Liang step by step, and at the same time extended his hand to Liang. The distance between the two was getting closer and closer, but just when the two hands were about to touch together, a voice suddenly sounded at the side. What are you doing? Violin. Come back. Jean's body trembled, and his outstretched hand hovered in midair. At the same time, a fiery red beam of light shot straight towards Liang. Episode 51. It was the red energy ray of the high-energy high beam of Leon emitted from the eyes of the laser eye. This ray energy level is very high, the destructive force and piercing force are extremely powerful, and it is a type of mutant with great lethality. This beam of light can even pierce the 10 tanks side by side, and if it directly hits ordinary people, the consequences can even directly vaporize them. But it was such a beam of light, when it approached Liang, it was slapped aside by Liang with a wave of his hand. Boom! A gap exploded in the building opposite, which was caused by the hit of the beam of light that had changed direction. What? Scott Summers was shocked, even with his strange glasses, he could see the look of shock on his face, and it was the first time he had seen someone who could block his ability so easily. Damn. Who are you? Scott said angrily. Liang glanced at him obliquely, and said somewhat helplessly, I am such a famous person, if you don't know him, then don't say anything? He is speechless about these people, he is a celebrity, these mutants have sores in their eyes? Liar. Come back soon. Scott hurriedly said. Jean's body was trembling lightly at this time, and his eyes were still fixed on Liang, and Liang was smiling at her, at the same time, now that there are people who are in the way, you should wait a little while. As he spoke, Leon suddenly held out his hand to Scott, and a pale red light appeared around him, rolling up violently, swelling like a wildfire in Liao Yuan for an instant, and exhaling and enveloping the entire roof of the tall building. In the flame-like parcel man, Scott felt a strong heat, and he did not want to shoot another beam of light according to Leon's position, more intense than just now, and at the same time, because of the beam of light, he directly plowed out a blank area in the flames, forcing all the flames away. Leon looked unchanged, just a little bit of it, and then very strange, the beam of light just disintegrated in the air, and Scott's body straightened violently, he felt an extremely powerful binding force, wrapping him tightly, at the same time, there was a tingling sensation on his body. At this time, looking around, the suit on Scott's body began to decompose little by little, like snowflakes being evaporated, revealing the skin inside, and the skin gradually became blood red, and the epidermis was also evaporated, revealing the flesh and blood below. Ah! Scott let out a roar of pain, and he felt pain everywhere in his body, as if he had been slashed by 1,000 knives, and the pain was unbearable from the inside out. Ah! He roared again, his body was stretched straight, just 2 or 3 seconds of effort, his body had become bloody. No. Jean didn't know how. Her eyes, which originally had no feeling for external objects, suddenly regained their clarity at this time, and the red light of the Dao Dao burst out of her body in an instant, and like the phoenix power on Liang's body, it spread out like a flame, colliding with Liang's phoenix power. It was good. Liang was not surprised to see this, but a smile appeared on his face. No. Liar, stop, you can't use this power, it will devour you. Scott yelled out without thinking. Jean's body trembled more and more. She looked at Liang with trembling lips. The two men's thoughts clashed invisibly around them. From time to time on the roof there would be a crack somewhere, the rocks would collapse like bullets, or a place would suddenly disappear, and some places would directly burn its flames. And the steel would be directly melted. Jean, although you and I have different origins from the same sect, the power in you and me is the same, and now, I let you feel what the true phoenix power is. Liang shrank his head high, his body slowly floated up, and the pale red fire around him rolled up, all of which rushed behind him, transforming into a phoenix that wanted to spread its wings and soar, and both Chin Grays and Scott even heard the phoenix's cry, and the sound shook people's souls. Scott's body was trembling, his body was already bloodstained by this time, and some places were already showing bones. No. Don't do this. Chin Gray, fearing this power in herself, has been resisting at the same time, and in her body, there is also a negative personality, which is catalyzed by the power of the phoenix. At this time, she watched Liang's actions. Her negative personality had almost broken through the blockade of the prison of thinking, and she herself had become a little confused, and her mood was extremely unstable. Liar. Don't be fooled by him, this power is powerful, and it will only give you sincerity if you feel and accept it with your heart. Like what? You see. Leon waved his hand, and under Chingri's horrified gaze, Scott turned into fly ash and disappeared directly from her side. No. With a scream, Chingray clutched her head and wailed in pain. Episode 52. The alarm quickly sounded throughout the underground space of the laboratory. The sound was harsh and loud, and the alarm lights everywhere were also lit up, flashing their red light. At the same time, Leon also heard the sound of many people running fast, and even the sound of guns being loaded. What a man. The first person to appear in front of him was an evolutionary who mastered the ability of space, and appeared directly in front of him, which was extremely abrupt. Huh? Liang raised an eyebrow, sensing the spatial fluctuations brought about by this person's appearance, which was obviously an alpha-level spatial ability, or the kind that could travel through space at will. This man was fully armed, completely dressed as a warrior, but he did not have a gun, but instead extended his hands to Liang, so that Liang immediately noticed the strangeness of the space around him. The space around him has been disrupted, the structure of space has also been destroyed. As long as the space-capable person on the other side is willing, he can directly scatter the space around Liang, and then Liang will become torn apart as he imagined. Unfortunately, this only exists in his imagination. Leon didn't make any moves, but with a slight smile on his face and asked, "When did you become an evolutionary?" Leon. After the man saw Liang's appearance clearly, the composure on his face finally disappeared, revealing a look of shock and a hint of fear, and his body could not help but tremble slightly, and subconsciously took a step back. "Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you for the time being, first answer my question, when did you become an evolutionary?" Leon said again. "You. How did you get in here?" the man asked with suppressed fear. "Answer my question, soldier." Liang's eyebrows were slightly raised, and the telepathic ability was activated, causing a great shock to his soul, and the man's face suddenly became dazed, and then he recovered in an instant, and somehow, he began to answer Liang's questions. "Half a month ago," the man said honestly. Liang bowed his head slightly, and then said, "What is your ability?" "Space mastery, I can split space, and then I can let myself travel through space, and I also have the ability to take people and matter through space." That humanity. Leon nodded and said to himself, "This is also a very good ability, but it seems that in the original plot of the Marvel Universe world, people with such abilities have also appeared. What is the Red Devil and the Blue Devil, and who is the Black Fat Man?" He couldn't think of it for a moment. After all, it was only a small role. "How many people are like you here?" Leon asked again. "Lots of them." The man was still not honest. It seemed that his words were fulfilled, and the next moment, several figures appeared around this person, men and women, no less than 20 in total. Coincidentally, all of them were spatial abilities. "I'll go, and I'll be really going to rot the streets in the future." Leon was suddenly surprised by the determination of mankind. So many evolutionists, many of whom are evolutionists with superpowers. This is a little inattention. If there is an ambitionist, is it not the source of turmoil? He did not consider the threat he posed to human society, and if he thought of it, he would not think so. With him and the Dinghai God Needle, human wisdom is united, and even a tyrant ambitionist like Magneto has to close his claws and obediently lie down, and he has to join forces with others to fight him. Liang's face was strange, and after the people saw that it was him, the look on his face changed drastically, and some people may have launched an attack on him subconsciously because of fear. The space around Leon rippled, and then visible to the naked eye, the space shattered like glass, and then reassembled, close to one of his walls, and suddenly a large area moved with the fragmented space, looking like space fragments containing wall debris. Changing into an ordinary person, in such a situation, the body will definitely become torn apart, but Liang is still standing there well, and the corners of his clothes are not messed up. Leon looked at these people curiously, and some of these people couldn't help but tremble with fear, and some of them swallowed their saliva. These people were all powerful evolutionists of the alpha level, and they were more than 20 people, and their abilities were similar. But when faced with Leon alone, they still feel fear and have no sense of security. You. Why are you here? Someone opened his mouth, with a trembling voice. Leon casually snapped his fingers, and the scattered spatial structure around him quickly returned to normal and stabilized, and those wall debris fell to the ground. Then, in the astonished eyes of everyone, I saw those wall fragments, as if they were placed upside down, stuck to the wall again in their original trajectory, and the wall was restored to its original state in a moment. This is the same space mastery, but Liang also used the power of time on this basis, directly turning back a small piece of time and space around him, so that everything could be restored to the beginning. Liang smiled lightly. I heard that you have mastered the cracking method of the X gene, and you have also made a lot of evolutionists. Well, it is called an evolutionary, right? After all, mutants are really not very good to talk about, and changing to Chinese is like cursing. So I came, as a researcher. I felt the need to come and see your progress, and if necessary, I could improve you holes or something. As if they had heard the joke, several of them looked at each other, and then one of them shouted, "No kidding, you damn executioner, you really deserve to go to hell." Well, it seems that the communication failed, and you still look very unwelcome to me, which makes people a little distressed. Liang scratched his head, and then suddenly smiled. Forget it, I don't bother to tease you anymore, so you can continue your business. I will visit here first. Saying that, he turned his head and left, without giving these people time to react. Yes, he was indeed walking, just like shopping, directly Sher ran walking forward. Damn. We can't let him enter the core secret area, we must stop him, and the alarm escalates so that other companions can also come. Good. With that, another attack was launched against Leon, and this time, several people joined forces to launch the capability. Episode 53. Now, Leon has successfully done this. The master personality of Chingray has been replaced by a sub-personality, and there is a change of priority between the two. That is, the Chingray who is now standing in front of Leon is the Dark Phoenix. The Dark Phoenix in the original plot can be able to throw off the entire street of the Phoenix Woman in terms of ability, and its use of the Phoenix power is definitely not comparable to the Phoenix Woman, and it is really counted, that is, it is only weaker than Liang. Now Liang is already in the middle of the second level of the Phoenix Force, can absorb energy autonomously, and the control of matter has reached the microscopic level. If this microscopic level is to set a standard, then he can now decompose the substance into cell sizes. Of course, such a degree of control. There is still a long way to go from reaching the subatomic level, but this road will not go too long for him. Because he now has the growth accelerator of Dark Phoenix, the Phoenix power of the two people is the same lineage, but it is not the same source, and Liang's Phoenix power comes from the world avoidance, which is the existence between the present world and the outer world. The Phoenix power of the Dark Phoenix comes from the depths of the cosmic void, and although the two are the same Phoenix power, the meaning represented is different. The most important point is that Leon can control the power of the Phoenix, while the Dark Phoenix is spawned by the power of the Phoenix, and the two are not comparable at all. But in the end, it is the same thing. The essence between the two is the same. The only difference is that Liang is the origin of the Phoenix Force, and the Dark Phoenix is the carrier of the Phoenix Force. The red energy beam disintegrated in front of the two of them, disappearing without a trace, as if it had been erased by an invisible force. In fact, these energies did not disappear, but were absorbed by Liang himself. Scott is furious at this time. He is in love with Dark Phoenix, and the two are almost about to establish a relationship, but at this time they see Chingray's arms in the arms of a man, and the key is that the latter has not yet resisted. Love is a light, green enough to make you panic. Seeing this, Scott did not go crazy, he was already determined. After hearing Leon's words, Dark Phoenix Chingray's words were only slightly silent for a moment. It seemed that the residual emotions of the master personality were still affecting her judgment, but she only looked at Scott lightly, and then said indifferently, "Let's go." The corners of Leon's mouth cocked slightly, and under Scott's watchful gaze, he moved the hand around Gray's waist down a little, placed it on his upturned hips, and then smiled. Okay, then leave. No. Scott was furious, and he didn't want to shoot out the energy beam from his eyes again, still shooting directly at Liang, but unfortunately, such an attack had no effect on him at all. He just waved his hand slightly, and the agitated energy beam directly collapsed and disintegrated. Leon didn't pay any more attention to Scott, provocatively put his head on Dark Phoenix, kissed his face full of temptation, and regardless of whether Scott's face was about to turn green, just a smile. The next moment, the two figures disappeared from his eyes. No. Scott roared angrily, his voice was as strong as blood, and then he saw that more violent energy beams were stirred up in his special glasses, firing into the air again and again. Of course, he recognized Leon, but he had no idea why Leon was a mutant, and he had the same power as Chingray, which made him shocked and angry. After the two disappeared, he vented like this, roaring at the same time, and then seemed to remember something, looked in one direction and was going to chase, but at this moment, the sound coming from a small headset in his ear made him feel a meal. Listening to the voice in the headset, his face changed dramatically, and then he clenched his fists, looked in that direction with anger and resentment, and then could only force his anger to leave from the place where he was at this time. The notice in the headset was nothing else, except that the X-Men squad members told him that Professor X had fallen into a coma for unknown reasons, and told all the X-Men members to hurry back. Professor X is obviously more important to the Mutant Academy than Gray. The direction he was looking in when he left was naturally the sword-shaped tall building that Leon had built, and his residence was basically unknown to no one. After all, he was very famous. At this time, Leon was hugging Jean Grey, that is, Dark Phoenix, and the two were appearing in the home of the sword-shaped high-rise building. Jean Grey's eyes looked at the changes around her, and did not show any emotion, and she also had the ability to teleport, and she was not surprised at all. From now on, you will be my companion. Leon smiled lightly. Okay. Jean Grey is very cold, or rather, the personality that belongs to Dark Phoenix, who is indifferent to many things. So, let's have a fusion of forces, and see what kind of improvement we can have for each other. Leon said. Dark Phoenix was silent for a little longer this time, and after about a minute, she nodded calmly, and then she pulled the zipper of her combat suit and took it off, leaving her proud body exposed to the air. Episode 54. The previous kiss made the Phoenix power on the two of them meet, and then Leon found that the Phoenix power in Jean Grey's body had a strong irritation to the power on his body, and when the two forces converged, the Phoenix power in his body would also grow. And if you want to blend the forces between them more thoroughly, it is obvious that only negative distance contact is the most direct, and Leon is ready to start a negative 20 centimeter contact with Jean Grey. The two of them hugged each other and rolled onto the bed, and it didn't take a total of 2 minutes. Leon felt that the Phoenix power in his body, just like when the two kissed before, had a strong reaction, and as the atmosphere warmed, the Phoenix power in his body grew more prominently. The two were in contact with each other, and Leon could also detect the changes in Jean Grey's body, as was the power of the Phoenix in her, but unlike his perfect control, Jean Grey was more like a puppet of the power of the Phoenix. Whether it was his mind or personality, he was polluted by the power of the Phoenix. These things are normal in Liang's view. He is not worried. What he needs is Jean Grey, the carrier of the Phoenix power, not Jean Grey's own. Two forces of different origins of the same sect blend together and grow together, which is the best result for Liang. The negative distance communication between the two lasted for nearly an hour in total. Unlike Lorna's delicate body, Jean Grey's body under the transformation of the power of the Phoenix was far stronger than that of Lorna, and she was one of the few people who could fight with Liang in bed. Almost an hour later, even Liang's body was so tight that he had a hint of fatigue. Jean Grey's body was paralyzed, and her final reaction was no different from Lorna's, and as a result, the strength of the Phoenix in Leon's body was greater than the sum of the previous month. As I said before, if you want to take on more Phoenix power, physical strength is a primary problem, and the result of this strength growth is to break the balance between the Phoenix power and the body. Now Leon was lying on the bed, and from time to time there were scars on his naked body, and the scars did not take more than a second from appearance to recovery, but this could also explain a lot of problems. The growth rate of the Phoenix power has once again exceeded the body's self-healing, and at this rate, this situation will last almost a message or two. He was glad that he had used the power of the Phoenix as a basis from the beginning, and after possessing the self-healing factor and other abilities, he could use the power of the Phoenix to strengthen other abilities, so that the power of the Phoenix would become the engine that would push it into the air. Mutants with self-healing factors such as Wolverine and saber-toothed tigers have reached a balance between the self-healing factors in their bodies and themselves, and they have no external energy to shoot into and strengthen themselves, so their superpowers are always fixed at a certain stage. But Leon was different. He had the power of a phoenix, and it was easy to grow energy, so that other abilities would grow with him, which was something that no other mutant could do. When he was still thinking here, the Cheen Greys next to him had fallen asleep at some point, and when he looked at the beauty around him, he didn't feel a touch of surprise in his eyes. This is a special object, enthusiasm like fire, but they're as cold as ice, and the double feeling makes Liang a little happy just now. I have found the treasure, and it seems that it is indispensable to come every day in the future. He got up and got dressed, and was pouring himself a glass of red wine when Sveja's voice came into his ears. Sir, Director Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. wants to assimilate with you, do you want to take over? Connect. Soon there was Nick Fury's voice in his ears, and there was anger in his voice. Do you know what you've done? Mr. Leon. The voice is incredibly serious. Liang's voice said plainly, this is just a small warning, don't try to divide me into a certain camp, don't provoke me again, I know a lot of things that you and the top level of the country are doing in secret, now I give you a piece of advice. Liang's voice paused slightly, and then he said coldly, I am Liang, the only truly free human being on the earth, I was born on the earth, but I am beyond the earth, any of your laws cannot be used on me, any of your ideas cannot be imposed on me. If the next time I find out that there are still people behind my back to do some small actions, then the next time will not be so simple. Are you threatening me? Nick Fury was more serious than ever. Liang snorted and said, I don't want to talk nonsense with you anymore, now all you need to do is turn on the TV. As he spoke, he hung up the phone, and then his hand flickered in front of his eyes, and an invisible electromagnetic signal began to flutter with his hand, and at the same time, thousands of people sitting in front of the television in the United States saw a picture appear on the television. Episode 55. In the television set in front of countless people, a blurry figure appeared. This figure had a dim background, and itself was like a fog, and there was a clear mask mark on its face, but unfortunately, because it was too blurred, people could not see clearly. Hello everyone, I'm Phoenix. It's an honor to meet you, and now I'm going to talk about the world. Countless people saw a voice on the television. This sound is very strange, like an electronic synthesis, resounding throughout Manhattan, New York, and even the entire United States, and even farther away. What's even more bizarre is that everyone hears different voices. Some people hear English in their ears, some are Chinese, some are still French, German, and other languages, in short, so that everyone can understand what the people on TV are saying. And that's not all. At the same moment, such a voice was heard on the onboard radio of all vehicles driving throughout the United States. The appearance of this voice made many people feel fear and panic, and then this emotion spread rapidly, and in just a few moments, the entire United States has fallen into a strange atmosphere. People put down their hands and looked at the people on TV in shock. We all live on Earth, and in the billions of years since the birth of Earth, there have been powerful creatures and powerful civilizations. In our generation, technology is highly developed, material abundance, almost everyone can get what they want, but now I want to tell you, what you see is only the appearance. There are countless ordinary people in this world, and among countless ordinary people, there are mutants and mutants. These people have a variety of strange abilities, some are extremely powerful, such as Magneto, Professor X, and others. There are also extremely weak, and ordinary people are no different. In the shadows of the world, there are many powerful organizations, such as the S.H.I.E.L.D. Bureau in the United States, the Shinspear Bureau in China, and the Hydra that has long been hanged but still has its remains. These powerful organizations master super technologies that ordinary people can't imagine, and in addition, there are many superheroes, these people with powerful special abilities, all the time subverting the scientific common sense of the whole world. People can fly, people can bathe in fire, people can become steel, and so on. Beyond your imagination. The figure on the TV seemed to be sighing, and seemed to be sighing. The general public can still maintain a sound scientific concept under such circumstances, and I sincerely admire that what is crazy and subverts scientific common sense at all times is often displayed in front of you, and you can continue to develop science and technology. To be honest, I'm really surprised that you're not crazy. At this moment, I don't know how many people heard Liang's words. These people include ordinary people, high-ranking officials, and mutants. Ordinary people think it's a prank, officials and the like feel threatened directly, and some mutants think he's a talent and dare to be so high profile. But your vision is still too shallow, only to focus on the Earth's grain-like land, and you don't know that you should have looked up at the starry sky, where there is a powerful existence that you can't imagine. We are not alone, and we even say that in the whole starry sky, the Earth is like a weak baby, and there are some threats that you are not aware of. The Kree, the Krulls, the Shia, these powerful alien empires, have always been a threat to Earth. And Asgard, Jotunheim, Muspelheim, these things that have long existed in mythology, you still don't know. There are more terrifying beings such as Thanos, Star Devourer, and such a horror, and you don't know anything. I tell you this, it is only equivalent to a science popularization, which is a small gift from me to mankind all over the world, and at the same time a warning to some people. What you don't know, I know, and what you know, I know better than you. If you want to know more, look for it, and you'll find the answer you want to know. The figure on the TV flickered and seemed to disappear, but then suddenly it came out again. By the way, I almost forgot one thing, the tsunami that happened in New York today, I made it, well, and the previous stock market crash, which is also my means, if I want to, I can destroy the whole world at any time, but hopefully that day will not come too soon. At the end of the conversation, the figures and voices on the TV have disappeared, and countless TVs have returned to their original channels, but some of the TV channel hosts are looking at each other, obviously they have seen the picture just now. Leon, who alone faced the whole of America, and even the whole world, did a terrifying live broadcast.